Greetings, gents, and welcome to episode 7 of Econoclasm. For this episode, I want to talk about the Libertarian voting bloc, as I've deemed it, and kind of its impact on recent U.S. elections and how it can be viewed from a libertarian perspective as a way to actually achieve some libertarian goals in the country rather than just constantly running a third-party candidate. Because let's face it, the Libertarian Party nominee is not going to ever win the presidency, especially with how they've been performing the last two elections. Not performing, but just the candidates they've run and the way the party is going. You know, they ran Joe Jorgensen in 2020, who did decent, 1.86 million votes, but in terms of her messaging was just terrible. We were in the middle of COVID during the election, and she focused on just run-of-the-mill libertarian talking points and didn't really go too heavily after COVID, all the lockdowns and everything that was going on then. And I'll never forget the one tweet she sent out about, I think it was during the George Floyd protest, saying it's not enough to not be racist, we must actively be anti-racist. Which is just ridiculous, especially coming from the Libertarian Party nominee for president. Especially with the way the liberals have severely watered down the term racist, where the most mundane things can get called racist. If you oppose the ridiculous DEI hiring or affirmative action, it's now racist rather than sensical or reasonable. Especially in regards to the messaging from a libertarian perspective. Like, yeah, racism is bad, but there are much larger problems out there than mean thoughts or mean words. I don't care if there's people out there who don't like me because of the color of my skin, when every single one of my fundamental human rights is being trampled and ripped apart by the state. And there's nothing that conflicts with libertarian ideology in terms of racism. I mean, libertarian ideology is a political ideology. It deals with the government and politics. It's not a social philosophy. It has nothing to do with, racism or anything like that. So if you're the libertarian candidate complaining about racism, you're just completely missing the point of why you're running and your purpose of what you want to accomplish. The only reason she did it was she was appealing to thugs who were burning down American cities because a drugged up felon who robbed a pregnant woman at gunpoint overdosed on fent while he was being arrested. And then you have the whole fiasco with Chase Oliver in 2024. The guy who supports trans kids and thinks you're a bad person if you don't want to mutilate or mutate or severely psychologically damage a child who is far too young to be making such a decision, who only got the nomination through dirty politics with a former cop at the party convention. Then he gets mad that people within the party that he shit on 4 years earlier when he ran for Senate in 2020 don't help him, when he explicitly said in the past he didn't want anything to do with them. And he goes out and has one of the worst showings in Libertarian Party history, especially if you're grading on how the Libertarian Party had been doing in recent years. Back in 2016, the Libertarian Party got 4.5 million votes. Chase Oliver, as of right now, at 4:37 a.m. on November 23rd, voting still not done somehow from the election back on the 6th, but he currently has 639,346 votes. That's only about 14% of what the LP got in 2016, and barely a third of what they got in 2020. That's so bad comparatively. It would be like if the Democrat or Republican nominee in 2028 ended up getting only 11 million votes. That's how embarrassing Chase Oliver's performance was this year. And it is fully deserved. He doesn't deserve the votes he did get, but embarrassing. I hope he's just goes into complete obscurity. He's basically already there anyway, but hopefully goes into even deeper obscurity after this. So, yes, I don't think the Libertarian Party nominee is going to win the presidency anytime soon. I know that's a controversial and hot take, but that's just how I see it right now. So the question is, what can libertarians do to try to effect any sort of change? Well, I think we need to try and get the major parties to look at us as a voting bloc, the way they do with other groups. Now they tend to look at gender and race when looking at can we win enough of these voters, but the libertarians can be an influential voting bloc moving forward if we, strategize right and look at how we can convince the parties to appeal to us and try to implement policy that is more libertarian, more freedom-minded, to try and win libertarian votes from the voting bloc going forward. Now, people may scoff at the idea of libertarians aren't going to decide elections. There's no point in appealing to them. But I've heard so much, mostly from Republicans, but about how the Libertarian Party candidate cost the Republican the election in this or that place, or how if all the Libertarians voted with Republicans, they would have won this election. Which, it's funny thinking that if Libertarians didn't vote for the LP candidate, they would all, for some reason, vote Republican. I mean, I'm pretty sure most Libertarians' second choice after the LP is just simply not voting. There's that meme that always likes to circulate, mostly during the election season, but even around in between years, of the guy saying, I'm going to vote third party. And then his one vote that could have went to the Republican doesn't, and the Democrats win, and the Democrat says no guns. But, Trump was worse on guns than Obama. So, Republicans, you can't really use that argument that, the Democrats are going to take away your guns, and you need to vote Republican so you can still have your guns. Just ignore the fact that, Republican presidents have historically been bad on guns. Just, at some point, think maybe we'll actually be good on guns. Republicans love to think that libertarians are just one or two ideological steps away from them, despite all the horrible policies that Republicans support. I mean, they claim that libertarians should vote for them on guns. Meanwhile, the whole purpose of guns is to fight the government if the need arises. And you have Republicans who basically worship police and the military. So, yeah, vote for me on guns, but I'm going to do everything I can to support and protect the people that you would need to use them against for the whole purpose and reason the Second Amendment and gun rights exist. But, vote Republicans because of the guns. But yes, I've heard from plenty of Republicans about how it was the Libertarians' fault that a Republican didn't win a particular election. So, do you think Libertarians can't influence elections? I've just heard Republicans say it so many times. And we can look at historic data in the recent elections to see how Libertarians could have influenced the election if they had voted a certain way. So in 2016, it was the LP's best showing, mostly because everyone hated Trump and Hillary at the time. People still do, but here's the states that went for Trump, that if all the Libertarians voted for Hillary, or whoever the Democratic nominee would have been, would have flipped from Trump to Hillary. Florida, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nebraska's 2nd District. So if every Libertarian voter who voted for the LP in 2016, if they all decided to vote for Democrat, Democrats win all of those states, which amounts to 87 electoral votes. Hillary finished with 227 electoral votes. So, you give Hillary those 87 electoral votes, guess what? She wins, she's president, Trump's out. But Libertarians can't flip elections. And people could say, oh, Libertarians would never vote Democrat, but if you remember from 2016, the media was pushing, kind of like lifting up Gary Johnson a bit. You know, that's where we get the famous, "What is Aleppo?" comment from Gary Johnson. And they were pushing that because, you know, it's the media, they're party of the Democrats. They wanted him put out there to draw votes away from Trump, but then suddenly they stopped putting him out there for some reason, because they realized he was actually taking more votes away from Hillary than from Trump. So, yeah, it's actually possible that the people who voted Gary Johnson could have flipped things over to Hillary. And you had states that went Hillary, where if all the Libertarians had voted Republican, would have flipped to Trump. Now, Trump won the election already, so this wouldn't have changed the result of the election, but you would have had Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, Nevada, Maine, and New Hampshire all flip to Trump. Now, that's 36 electoral votes. Again, Trump already won, but that results in Hillary dropping down to 191 and Trump winning with 340 instead. In total, that was 123 electoral votes that Libertarian voters could have flipped in the 2016 election. That's almost half of what you need to be president. So if you think Libertarians can't influence things, historically it's wrong. Even in 2020, now there's no states that Trump won where if Libertarians vote Republican or Democrat, it goes Democrat. But there are 3 states where if Libertarians vote Republican, would have flipped the state that went Democrat to go Republican. And that would have been Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona, which is 37 electoral votes. Now, if Trump wins those 3 states and those 37 electoral votes, the end result of the election, actually, is an electoral split of 269 for Trump and 269 for Biden. In this case, you send the election to the House. Now, in 2020, the Democrats had the House, so Biden probably still wins in 2020. But you can see how there are still times when Libertarians can influence the election. And you can go look at, Senate races or House races or whatever kind of races. I'm sure there's places where the Libertarians could have flipped the election one way or the other if they had voted all in one different direction. Now, in 2024, again, the results aren't fully counted yet. But from what is available, no states flip if all the Libertarian voters switch their votes to one party or the other. But there's something very important with this election. Trump went to the Libertarian convention and spoke at it and appealed to the Libertarian voters. And he made some promises for, if he got elected, how he would do things that Libertarians want. One was, freeing Russ Ulbricht on day one, which we can very quickly find out if he'll do or not. If not, I'm going to come down hard on him and pray that... I shouldn't say that. He also said he was going to put a Libertarian in his cabinet, which, as far as I know, hasn't happened yet. He's put some decent people in. Tulsi, RFK, Elon, Vivek. But none of them are Libertarians. But we'll see. And made some other appeals to the Libertarians, but that had somewhat of an impact, and some other aspects influenced Libertarians to vote Trump, but I don't know a single person who voted Chase Oliver, especially in, traditional Libertarian spheres. Like I said, he got 600-some thousand votes, but all the Libertarians I know voted for Trump. Now, how much of that was Trump appealing to Libertarians and how much of it was just Kamala being that bad? Don't know exactly. You have to go down and talk to everyone. I mean, I personally voted Trump because Kamala was just that bad. I don't trust Trump's promises. He broke a lot of the ones that were good in his first term, but in 2020, the LP had 1.86 million votes. This time around, they had only 600,000. So those 1.2 million votes went somewhere. Does that all necessarily go to Trump? No, some of them may have just not voted. Some may have voted RFK as a just rebellion vote in general, and they just didn't want to give a vote to the LP. And as I said earlier, a lot of Libertarians just, instead of voting LP, may just not vote. But you may have had a lot of Libertarians who normally wouldn't have voted decide, I'm going to vote this time because we need to stop Kamala, or because Trump actually appealed to the Libertarians and they decided to vote. Libertarians may not vote because they realize it's kind of pointless, even if you vote LP. But they may have thought, hey, we have a chance to get some Libertarian things done if Trump wins, so I'm going to actually go vote this time. I don't know for a fact, but I can pretty much assured at least one person did that. And in this election, you saw Trump win multiple states that he had lost either in 2020 or 2016. Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Nevada. 4 states that Trump had lost in one of the last 2 elections went for him this time. Or those 4 states that Libertarians could have flipped red in one of those elections. Nevada went for Hillary in 2016, and LP voters could have flipped it to Trump. And then in 2020, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona all went Biden, where LP voters could have flipped it to Trump, and Trump won all 4 of those states this time. Now, he didn't win Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, Maine, or New Hampshire, like he could have if all the LP voters flipped red in 2016, but those were all smaller states, except for Nevada. Nevada is one of the smaller ones. It's not Minnesota or Colorado's 10 votes, but the larger states did flip and had a pretty big impact on Trump winning the election. Now, it's not to say that libertarians are the only reason Trump won. I mean, he lost Pennsylvania in 2020, and the margin wasn't close enough where the libertarians would have flipped it. That was likely, the Amish who ended up flipping Pennsylvania for Trump, insanely enough. But there is certainly evidence that libertarians had some influence on Trump winning 2024 when he had lost 2020. So I think that should be the strat moving forward for libertarians, is try and convince Democrats and Republicans, like, hey, you need our votes. We can influence elections. We can decide if you get elected or not. Especially with some of the slim margins you've seen in states or other races. Libertarians can impact elections. And if we can convey that to the major parties until there's some change in the way people vote, whether mixed member proportional representation or the alternative vote system, it's a way for libertarians to try and achieve some objectives. Obviously we're not going to get a Rothbardian in office anytime soon, but unless, someone pulls a Ron Paul again and the Republican Party doesn't screw him out of the election, which might be a decent chance now that they could actually, but obviously Ron Paul's way too old to run. Rand Paul's not as good. Maybe if Dave Smith decides to run Republican and gets the nomination, but so make the two parties appeal to us. Make them decide to do things that actually advance liberty in the country. And not just, appeal to it in campaign speeches or ads or, events. Make them follow through with it. Like I said, Trump made promises to the libertarians. If he doesn't follow through, libertarians could say, screw you to the 2028 Republican nominee. But like, yeah, the last time we voted Republican, you backed out on everything you promised us. So, hold them accountable if you decide to vote for them. But there's a chance that Republicans could learn from 2024. Hey, Trump went to the LP and spoke to them and got some of their votes and ended up winning. Maybe in 2028, the Democrat and Republican nominees both come. I'd be hard-pressed to see someone like, Gavin Newsom show up to the LP convention when he's basically destroyed California. But, the Dems probably run him anyway because they want to destroy everything. But if libertarians can recognize the opportunity they have and effectively seize the moment and reposition thinking in the country for people to look at how important winning over libertarians could be moving forward, there's a real chance to actually get some libertarian action done at a national level and state levels too. People can realize the same thing. In governor elections, state House and Senate, state cabinet level positions. I don't know exactly how the messaging can change like that. Libertarians aren't exactly big believers in centralization, although that's only really for government that can centralize movements. It doesn't go against libertarian philosophy, because like I said at the start, libertarianism is a philosophy about government and politics. And so there's nothing wrong with having, some sort of central leadership for libertarian thought. It certainly isn't the LP. It might be, the Mises Institute in terms of true libertarianism. It's certainly not, the Cato Institute or Reason Magazine, but if someone can lead that charge, probably Dave Smith, because he's the Dave Smith, Tom Woods, those people, because they have the massive audiences, and this whole premise is kind of coming from something Dave mentioned in one of his recent episodes anyway. Again, go watch Part of the Problem. Great podcast. But if libertarians can recognize the opportunity they have a real chance of achieving something. Now, will they, is the question. But if you decide to go down this path, the most important thing is to make sure you hold candidates accountable if they win over the Libertarian voting bloc moving forward. That they don't just get your votes and do away with their promises, which is just the run-of-the-mill attitude of every politician. But maybe we can change things, get some positive change for liberty in this country, or in individual states, or local communities, whatever. It's worth a shot. But we'll see. We'll see what Trump does. We'll see if the libertarians, move forward with such a strategy. But whatever advances the cause of liberty, I'm all for. So, that'll be it for today. If the world doesn't end in nuclear apocalypse, maybe I'll do a Russia-Ukraine episode next week, since it's especially important right now. But thanks for listening. I'll catch you guys next time.